Good morning, everybody. It is 8:10 a.m., April 22nd. Welcome to my channel. This market kind of had a little sell-off yesterday, but we find ourselves bouncing off the lows from yesterday. I'll get into a little bit of the poor structure that we just sold off yesterday. We're kind of back. We touched briefly last week's lows in the overnight session, so that sell-off was met already with equal buying. All right, so I know we gapped down or whatever, but pretty much erased the selling, and I'll show you guys that what I'm talking about in a second. Good morning, Chief. All right, so today we're gonna have Tesla earnings after the close. We're gonna have a lot of Fed speak today, right at the market open. This market, as far as like day trading setup for myself, I just missed a setup yesterday by like a couple of pennies, but you have to stay disciplined with your setup. I would have had a nice short. And then the market, if you're watching it, the tempo is very weird. It's kind of slow. It's like a slow moving, high volatile market. It's not really erratic. It's kind of like the tempo is very slow. So it's very odd. And the volume was still not very high yesterday. So you could just, I think that's what's happening is the volume is less, but the volatility is there. So you get, even though the ranges are bigger, the move of the candle is just slow. The tempo is very slow. So that's what's going on. So, anyways, welcome to my channel. My name is Steven Gonzalez. I use market profile and volume profile to find structure in the markets, along with supply and demand, gamma exposure levels, the most traded price of the year, the month, the week, and the previous day. That's my edge. That's how I look at markets and analyze the data. Okay. Hopefully, I can share that with everyone on the channel. All right. And of course, I would hope that you can join me every morning, give you the scoop on the markets, right? The market news, economic calendar, obviously earnings calendar, leaders and laggards, basically the overall story of the markets, and of course later on we go over daily charts, the quintessential triple-headed monster, and I analyze the Nasdaq and ES futures and give long and short trade scenarios. Okay, so stick around for that. I think we can get right into what's moving futures, the watch list here. Let's check it out. So, Ethereum is up 3.88%. Bitcoin's up 1.52%. Crude up 1.31%. Crude retreated a little yesterday. Gold, I believe, hit 3,500 for the first time. It pulled back a little bit. It's up 1.22%. Russell's up 0.94. Nasdaq's up at 0.83. The Dow is up 0.80. ES up 0.75. Silver's up 0.55. 30-year bonds are being bought today, up 0.25. The dollar, which is under 100, it's at 98.47, is up 0.20. 10-year yield is basically flat, about 4.397 yield, and the VIX is down 4.49% to a 32 VIX. Okay. Now, quick thing on the markets, right? Think about what's happened with these markets, right? We already had tariffs. We already had 90-day pause of tariffs. Then we had Trump talking about Powell. There's a pattern starting to show here, all right? And I believe it's a bottoming pattern. I don't mean in a candlestick. I mean in just the way the market's acting. How much more negative news do you think is going to take down the market? I mean, we just had Trump, talk about Powell, possibly getting rid of him. China retaliating, right? So what the market always does is prices in the forward. It's a discounting mechanism, right? It discounts things for the future. So this is all getting priced in. Something something that we don't know yet would have to take this down market, in my opinion, a lot farther. Remember, all the stuff that we've heard is already baked in. So it's really now about the stuff we don't know. Now, these little things with Powell, right? All right, you had a little sell off, but that sell off was taken back already. Now, don't get me wrong, not completely, but like I just said, we just hit last week's lows. So basically, yeah, that is right. It pretty much almost got taken back, right? It's not sustaining lower price action. So just wanted to go over that. And we're going to go over some, like an hourly chart just real quickly a little bit. All right. So let's move on. Mag 7 Plus, GE reported earnings. They beat. They are up 4.29%. Nvidia's up 1.10%. Broadcom up 1.08%. Amazon's up 1%. Coinbase is up 0.86. AMD up 0.77. JP Morgan up. And we got, let's see, there's any laggards? There's no laggards today. I mean, after that big sell off and the bounce, everything is up. Okay, everything is up. Let's move on to sectors. Usually, semis were the laggard yesterday, and look, they're the leader this morning. They are up 0.93, followed by technology, the largest weighted sector in the S&P 500. Financials is up as well, 0.88. This is moving around on me. Energy is the leader this morning. Okay. Let's look at this more. Discretionary at 0.79. Remember, you got Tesla earnings after the close, and everything is up. All right. The only thing that's flat is communications. Okay. Remember, Google reports this week. All right. Google reports this week. Let's move on. All right. Let's move on to economic calendar, earnings calendar, and news. Let's move it. Let's do it. All right. On the economic calendar front, we have Fed Jefferson speaking at 9 a.m., Fed Harker speaking at market open at 9:30, Fed Kashkari at 2 p.m., API crude at 4:30, and then we have Fed Kugler at 6. Okay, that's today's economic calendar. Now, as far as today's news, all right, let's go into it here. So, GE Aerospace tops first quarter profit expectations on maintenance demand. Halliburton first quarter profit falls on North America drilling weakness. 3M cuts 2025 profit forecast amid trade tensions. Tesla investors await details on affordable electric car plan to boost sales. Tesla investors are anxious to know if it plans to roll out a cheaper car and a robotaxi service this year are on track, and whether CEO Elon Musk is ready to ditch his role in Trump administration soon and get back to managing the company more closely. Okay. All right. So let's look at some of this. On commodities, gold briefly broke past 3,500 per ounce to an all-time high on safe haven demand. Oil prices edged up on short covering, but tariff worries continue to linger. Separately, investors in the U.S. are looking out for commentary from a host of Fed policymakers who are slated to speak at different events later in the day. And EV giants Tesla quarter earnings, we talked about that. All right. Let's see here. Anything else that I want to talk about? Says Amazon and Walmart. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration intends to press India to give online retailers such as Amazon and Walmart full access to 125 billion e-commerce market. The Financial Times reported, citing industry executives, lobbyists, and U.S. government officials. Interesting. Let's see. Chevron, the oil major, is the oil major is conducting minor planned maintenance at its Wheatstone natural gas facility in Australia, temporarily reducing production rates on LNG Train 1. As company spokesperson said, the annual service is expected to be completed within the week. All right. Let's see. All right, United Health Group, the company spent nearly 1.7 million on security for its top executives in 2024. The healthcare conglomerate disclosed on Monday, months after the fatal shooting of senior executive Brian Thompson outside a Manhattan hotel in December. The company also paid 207,931 on behalf of certain family members of the executives to provide them with personal and home securities. It said, "We believe that these security services are appropriate and necessary given the risks associated with executive officers at the company." United Health said in the filing. Filing also showed United Health CEO Andrew Witty's total compensation for 2024 was 26.3 million compared to 23.5 million a year ago. The conglomerate spent 150,951 towards Witty's security, while 926,989 was paid to Heather Cianfrocco, the CEO of the company's health services unit Optum. All right. Let's look at Amazon. Jeffries cuts target price 240 from 250. AMD Bernstein cuts target price to 95 from 125. Okay. Intel Bernstein cuts target price 21 from 25. All right. That's that. I don't know if the juice has anything for us. Let's look at the juice. Now that I talked about the trade from India, that stuff. U.S. equities are set to rebound from Monday's losses. Investors carefully evaluated up progress on trade talks with India and Tesla's forthcoming earnings. Okay, talked about that already. Is there any red here? I mean, I guess he said Trump, good chance of Russia-Ukraine deal this week. All right, let's move on. Let's look at the earnings calendar real quick. We have before the open today was Verizon, GE, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Halliburton. Okay, Kimberly Clark. After the close today, Tesla, Intuitive Surgical, Enphase, SAP, Capital One. All right. And tomorrow before the open, Boeing, AT&T, Vertiv, Nextera Energy, Philip Morris, GEV, that's GE Vernova. Okay, that all is for tomorrow. All right, moving on now. We're going to go over to the hourly chart just to show you where we're at in this market. All right, I'm going to show you that little hourly chart here just to show you some levels I have on my screen. Okay, so number one, we have a trend line, right? This trend line obviously marking lower highs, lower lows right here, right? So we have this trend, right? And yesterday, this is last week's lows right there. You see how in the overnight session we hit that twice. That would mean we took back all yesterday's selling. See these candles? That's poor structure. Basically, you just straight shot down, no consolidation really, and you went right back up, right? That's what I'm talking about. This market, we're not like down here today, or we're not down here today, right? I have an anchored VWAP now set from this low. We'll see how that responds. You can see just what we've been doing. When you came down to here, you look to the left. This was I believe the low of the day that they tried to take back this big move on this candle, right? So we kind of revisited that low and then got bought up. Now, can this hit up here and fall again? Sure. Sure can. All right. Just wanted to show you guys that. Now we'll move on. I mean, QQQ has a similar trend, similar look to the charts. All right, now we're going to go over the daily charts here. Let's go over to this crazy chart. All right, so this has just been a mess. I mean, this price action is a mess. It is not. This is definitely not one of my favorite markets. It is horrendous. I mean, we were selling off. You got the 90-day pause, big candle, right? Then you took back that, and then you moved back up, and then you gap lower, right? And then had a day where you kind of consolidated inside day. Now we sold off, and now we're taking back the sell-off. It's just all over the place. Forget about swing trading. I mean, this is like, unless you're like 3-6 months out with your positions, this is like not very easy to sit here. I mean, even yesterday, I did a bunch of charting yesterday because wasn't able to do it over the weekend because of Easter. and just everything I looked at was just a mess. Everything's in balance. There's nothing really trending that much. It just looks like garbage. And that's why this market's moving like that. Okay, so yesterday, look, we opened at last week's lows and we came all the way down here and kind of closed almost at the midpoint of the session. Okay, and I said, look, there's that low, 410 low. We came right basically down to it. Okay, now where are we at now? 518.20. We are right here. Okay, upper third of yesterday's session. Let's look at the live look at futures. Okay, live look at futures. So you can see yesterday, just like I showed you just before, there's that take back of this big move. We came right down to it, right? And then we're starting to form a big balance area, very big. Okay, so we just have to see. You can see we just tapped last week's lows right here. I was talking about that earlier. I just showed you the hourly chart. Yes, you can see. Look, that was last week's lows. We just came up to it, right? So if we start to find acceptance above this, that move yesterday it's already gone. Crazy. Okay. Let's look at the Qs. All right, Qs kind of actually breached past this low yesterday, but just a mess. The chart's a mess. So yesterday closed at 433. We're at 437.20 right now. We are right here, close to last week's high lows. Sorry. So we're at the upper third of the session, all right, of yesterday. So that's like I'm saying. We're right by the opening of yesterday, right? There's a gap here, but we're literally where we opened yesterday. We're like there. So what did that sell off mean yesterday? Not really much of anything now, right? This is what I'm talking about. It was just reaction to Trump and Powell. It doesn't mean we can't go lower. It just means that the market's telling us maybe we might be bottoming, but who knows, right? So here's the Nasdaq futures. You can see touch last week's lows. We're inside yesterday's session. Okay, that's that. Let's move on to the bond market. That's your triple-headed monster here. Let's look at that bond market. Kind of inside yesterday. Let's look at that. There's your triple-headed monster here, and you can see here they were downtrending. Then we ripped up, right? Went back under the 2025 anchored VWAP. 100-day moving average now we're at. And we're just kind of right here. I kind of think it's a wait and see. So that's what we're going on there. Now look at the dollar. The dollar has, like I said, hasn't seen this low, I think, in more than 5 years. You can see this is a 3-year chart. Look, that's the low. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the low, and we're past that. Like I said, does this mean that the dollar is less powerful? It is. Does it mean people are getting away from the dollar? Possibly. Getting some buying to this morning, right? But we just have to see what that dollar does. Now, usually the cheaper dollar generally is good for equities, right? Good for commodities. But like I said, in this case, it might be people getting away from the dollar. So we just have to see. All right, let's look at the VIX. It's our little fear or hedge gauge here. Remember, VIX is 30 days out of fear, 30 days out. Okay. So if we zoom in here, we're up 60. And like I said, we're just in this range. That range would be from 35 and change to about 30. Okay, we're just hanging out here, which is decently volatile to just hang out in the 30s. Okay, it just shows you the uncertainty in our markets. All right, now we're going to go back. We're going to go back to the market profile and volume profile analysis. I'm just going to pull that up. Just give me a second here. And we'll pull it up. Alrighty. Let's analyze this together. Let me get my marker out. Trusty marker. All right. So, I mean, his profile looks ugly as ugly, very ugly. Okay. You got the most traded price of the week. That would be 53.25. Okay. Decent amount of volume there. Then you get skinny and skinny. A little bit of volume here yesterday, the most traded price. Then you have an incomplete. You don't really have an excess low. You could see here yesterday that was really a poorish low, even though it has a little excess, but that's kind of, you can see it here. Usually you get excess. Okay. I don't know if that gets corrected, but usually something like that gets corrected, meaning the market has to push through this eventually, maybe, right? Because that's usually, markets don't finish like that, looking like the profile like that. They look like excess, excess, right? Markets don't usually, they have excess at the top, excess at the bottom, right? That's a little incomplete. All right, but let's just look at what happened yesterday. So this is yesterday. So when we opened, okay, when we opened, we only had this much buying activity, and the ticks were very weak. Internals were very weak. So I was just looking for most likely, because remember that level I was talking about, 52.50. If you look to the left, I'm saying those lows are very important, right? And so once we started to move down, it was just an orderly sell-off, right? And we came into single prints. We did clean some single prints, but not all. So the market wasn't weak enough to go all the way down and clean the single prints, and then we bounced right to the 50% retracement of yesterday. Okay. Now let's go back to here. All right. Now currently 52.54 is the overnight high. 51.71 is the overnight low. Yesterday's high is what is that? 52.60. Is that 60 or 50? 52. And the low was 51.27 down here. Okay. Now from yesterday in the overnight, we have a couple demand zones that's formed, a new supply zone that's formed. We have last week's lows right there, 52.51. Okay, you can see that overnight overnight session, that was resistance. I remember I said we dropped all the way down to here. Now look, it went all the way back to the open of yesterday. Just nuts, right? Again, here's another thing. Like, it seems I'm finding myself, besides yesterday, because yesterday I did like where the market opened and what it did. I just didn't get my setup triggered. So in this case, though, again, what are we doing? Right? Remember this day, and then you're inside. Like, those are hard days to trade. Okay, when you're inside a session, they're not easy days to trade. Okay, so that's why right now we have price right here, the most traded price of the overnight, 52.34. Okay. However, what do we have? We have some levels to talk about here. All right. So basically, 52.54 to 57 right here. You have what I like to call confluence high with the last week's lows. Okay. And then at the overnight lows, you have the most traded price of yesterday, demand zone, and an overnight low. Okay. So that, again, the overnight session is very key into determining what I want to do. All right. A lot of overhead supply. You have an unfilled gap above. Okay. Unfilled gap above. Now, we do have these lows that is incomplete. We do have single prints that have not been cleaned. Okay. But this is what we're working right now. Market's bouncing. Right. So inventory is, let's look at that. This is this short activity to this much long activity. So that's around 90% net long in the overnight. Okay, 90% net long in the overnight with price at the most traded price of the overnight. All right, so if you look, if we were to look, I'll just show you. Let's look at the daily. I'm sorry, the overnight session. See this? I'm just looking at this, the most traded price. You see that price action? These are just the bars, right? A lot of price, a lot of volume right here. Okay, we're gonna move away from that eventually. All right, so let's just get into scenarios here. Okay, so price is here. So a couple things have to happen before this happens, okay? Well, this 52.34 is going to be a significant little level right here, okay? So first thing that I'd like to see is to see if you can break this supply zone, this first one. That's that confluence high that I talked about. Now, once you do that, maybe you even go into the middle of this gap, right? What I would like to see then is even if you pulled back to see if you can hold the 52.34 level and possibly go up to the most traded price of the week, which is 53.25. Okay, 53.25. The next move would be if the market did correct a little bit into this demand zone, you could also pop up and go the same route. Last line of defense is this 51.86 to 51.70 area. If we were to pull back, and this is the most traded price of yesterday, okay? If we were to pull back into this confluence low, you have the close, the most traded price of yesterday, overnight low. There's a lot of confluence here with a demand zone. I would think that would be my last place that I'd like to go long. Obviously, you have demand zone here, yesterday's lows. That structure is incomplete. I don't think I would like to just sit there and try to reverse this market at that point. Okay, if we were down here, that means we're probably weak. That's the long side. All right, let's look at the short side. Okay, price is here. So most traded price is 52.34. I'm going to assume those are buyers. Okay, so if the market moves up and gets into this area, and of course the gap, strong market will fill this gap. But if we kind of come in here and do a lower high and start trending lower and we come through to 52.34, I think that's going to correct. And you either, get this move and bounces or get down to here. Okay. If this market's super weak and you break this is going to bring us to this yesterday's lows of 51.27, and we try to clean those single prints. Okay. That would correct this poorish low here. All right. That's kind of what I'm seeing the best trades. All right. Now that is the ES. And we're going to move over to the NASDAQ now. Okay. Here's your NASDAQ. Let's push this higher a little bit. All right, so we have a similar. Can you make this a little bigger? All right, so we have, we have a perfect confluence low. I mean high, right here, 187.70. You can notice these are almost equal to the tick right here. That's the overnight high and yesterday's highs. That becomes a breakout point or a big resistance area. So, and this encompasses last week's lows. Okay, with a supply zone. Price is right here, right? So in the ES, you notice the structure is the ES session in the overnight is inside, right? But it's nestled inside, not close to the highs. It went a little bit, but didn't go like the Nasdaq did. Okay, and this area becomes very important. You got a gap here, and it went right to the old unfilled gap, also, which is also yesterday's highs. Okay, inventory pretty much close to 90% net long. This is the only short activity to this much long activity in the overnight. All right, that could be corrected. All right, same setup. Okay, what do we have in the Nasdaq here? Well, overnight low matches up with the close, yesterday's most traded price, and the overnight low. Okay, it's very similar, except this is very exact here. This confluence high, it's very exact. Okay, that's a big level to watch. And you can see here as well, the profile is kind of flattish at the bottom. That usually markets don't end usually with those flattish bottoms like that, right? So same kind of deal here. Okay, you put a little level here. You can see Nasdaq ate into a lot of those single prints from the past, but wasn't able to fully clean them. Okay, wasn't able to fully clean them. So let's get right into it, and we're going to look at the scenarios here. Okay. Okay. Start with a bull case here. All right. So price is here, right? We have a big demand zone right here with the week to date VWAP right here. So like I said, we can come in here, get resistance into this week high. Let's say we correct, come right into this demand zone, hit that week to date VWAP, and start to try and then break this level and try to fill this gap and go up to where? Ultimate balance, 184. That's the most traded price of the month, right? Of the week, of the rolling week. So it's a big level. Okay, that's your bear bull line. If we take this out and hold price above it, we're going to get a nice bounce. You have to sustain above it, but we're going to get a nice bounce. That's why this move went down so far, because we came from ultimate balance. Big moves happen from there, but now look, we bounced pretty nicely. Okay, that's why this move was exacerbated, because of ultimate balance. Okay, next thing could happen, we could also push down into this confluence low, that 178.63. That's the overnight low with the most traded price yesterday, the close, and this demand zone. Okay, come in here, bounce, also try to fill this gap. Not sure if we make it all the way up here if we do that. Anything below this level, probably not interested. The market will probably be pretty weak to hit yesterday's lows. Okay, moving on to bearish setups. Okay, all right, so let's look at it. We have this confluence high here, right? So market could come up, even do a little bull trap. Boop, still in supply, can't fill that gap. Lower high, and then it's a push down. And it also, I didn't mention this before, 181 is the most traded price of the overnight. Okay, price is right there right now. If we come through that, that's going to cause some selling and possibly move all the way down into this area. Now, like I said, this is a strong area. It should be support. If it's not and you break through it, you're going to test yesterday's lows of 177 and try to clean up these single prints and possibly go down to the next demand zone of 175. Okay, like I said, inside this prior day session, it's just, this area here is probably a very nice area for shorts, because you're dealing with yesterday's highs, right? Even though this is a confluence low, it's the overnight lows are not as powerful as like the RTH lows. Okay, that's why this for a short is a better setup than, let's say, if we just came down here, broke this level, hold. Right? It's kind of what I'm seeing today. Okay, not my favorite. Not my favorite, but hey, you only can analyze what's in front of you. All right. So that will do it. Hopefully you like that analysis. Smash that like button. That would mean a lot to me. All right, and hopefully you can join me every day. Do this every morning. Analyze markets. Give you the market story. That obviously leaders and laggards, the market news, economic calendar, all that jazz, as well as analyze the daily charts. And I just gave you the long trade long and short trade scenarios in the ES and the NASDAQ futures. Okay, so have a plan. I'm going to sit back and wait for that plan to develop. If I don't find a setup of what I just was showing you, obviously new setups form because I don't know what data will open, like how the market will open, who will be strong, I don't know that. Nobody knows that until the market opens. All right, so that's different. There could be scenarios that I do that I don't show because I don't have that information yet. So just to let you know that, but we do have a plan, and I like it. It's not the market. This market's not the market I love, but you got to trade what you have in front of you. And so everybody, have a great day, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning. Okay, take it easy.